We have breaking news from the NHL. Columbus Blue Jackets head coach Mike Babcock has resigned amidst the scandal and investigation he's been under. We'll discuss more that we learned about the situation coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have breaking news from the NHL. We have a resignation regarding Mike Babcock. We've learned some more details of the investigation, and we have some statements here to take a look at. And of course, we also have a new coach now. So Mike Babcock, of course, had signed a 2-year deal back in July when his deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs had finally expired. He was reportedly being paid $4 million per season for those 2 years. That's pretty big money. And of course, he'll never get to be behind the bench, won't get to lead through training camp. His time in Columbus has come to an end amongst this investigation and this whole scandal that's been ongoing here for the past few days regarding, either looking through photos of pictures on people's phones or just his version of trying to get to know the players better. And we did learn a little bit more of some of this information that's come out. But essentially, here's the statement that Babcock put out, officially resigning from the Jackets. It says, upon reflection, it's become clear that continuing on as the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets was going to be too much of a distraction. While I'm disappointed to not have had the opportunity to continue the work we've begun, I know it's in the best interest of the organization for me to step away at this time. I wish everyone in the organization well in the upcoming season. So we had seen before this statement had come out, there were some tweets from some NHL insiders, including Elliotte Friedman and a few others, saying that the news was going to be coming that Babcock was stepping down. The Columbus Blue Jackets have already made an announcement that associate coach Pascal Vincent has been named a new head coach and has agreed to a 2-year contract extension. So they've got their new coach in place. Obviously, I knew it was going to have to likely be somebody internal. And as I said yesterday, we were talking about the latest updates and the speculation that this was coming. I really didn't see a way forward for Mike Babcock. I just thought it was going to be way too awkward and just uncomfortable for everybody involved for him to remain in his position. It just did not line up to me like he could continue. For one, I would think as a coach, it would have been challenging for him to not wonder who complained, for starters. And obviously some people were not comfortable with him as coach, and it probably would have created a really, potentially toxic work environment for everybody involved. Now, some of the stuff that we've learned here from this organization, some statements and things put out from sources. Emily Kaplan of ESPN, she tweeted out that, according to her sources, the investigation revealed some players didn't feel comfortable with Babcock as the coach. One source told her from the NHLPA investigation was that there was just awkward interactions. She also had a quote from a unnamed player agent who said, he may be trying to change, but you can't force it. His communication style wasn't going to work with the younger generation. And as we, learned before, a lot of the things he had done since he last coached the Maple Leafs, it did sound like he had done a lot of work on trying to learn, change, adapt. Obviously, the style that was used more commonly in the 80s and 90s, today's kids don't respond to the same way anymore. And you have to kind of learn and adapt as you go and change your style, or it's just not going to work. It's going to be uncomfortable for everybody. Elliotte Friedman put out a tweet saying that according to multiple sources from what he's been told, one of the most serious concerns revealed in this investigation was a meeting that occurred away from team facilities that included several minutes of looking through a phone. So clearly, he might not have done the exact same thing with every single player he met with. Obviously, you heard some comments from like Boone Jenner, Johnny Gaudreau. Maybe he was a little bit different with the veteran players, and maybe it was a little bit more voluntary. At least that's the way they made it sound, like it wasn't a big deal, that he just kind of said, like, I want to get to know you better. Can you show me some pictures of your family? What did you do this summer? Things like that, and they had no problem with it. Johnny Gaudreau said, hey, I'm proud of my family. I love my newborn child. I'll gladly show pictures of that stuff. And I understand that. That's all fine and dandy. But maybe he didn't have the same approach with every player. Maybe he was a little bit different. And it sounds like, from what Friedman had said before, he had heard that at least one or some of the younger players were not comfortable with this. And maybe he did say, because what was told to Paul Bissonnette, who first put out the story on the Spit and Chicklets podcast, was that he was asking to go through their phones. The way Jenner and Gaudreau made it sound like it was a lot more voluntary, and maybe with them it was. I don't have any reason to say that they're lying. That's not what we're saying, but I think it's quite possible he might have, done things just a little different in every different meeting. I don't know, but clearly, this wasn't going to work. And at the end of the day, just like the player agent said, maybe he tried, but you just can't force it. Like, the guy is awkward. There's just no way around it. Like, numerous people that have worked with him over the last, whether it be during his time in Detroit, his time in Toronto, even some that were worked with him when he went back to Saskatchewan after he was let go from the Leafs, they all said the same thing, was that he's only out for himself. A lot of people obviously do not like this guy and want to see him fail, which is clearly why I think when the players felt uncomfortable, they probably thought, I know the best way to go about this. Give the information to those who don't like him, and they'll get it out there on their platform, and then that'll be the way to get attention, because I still would be willing to say that I bet some players would be uncomfortable going to their GM or to their coach or anybody and saying, like, I'm uncomfortable with this person. It's still a little tricky, even though things are supposed to be more open, and hopefully everybody learned a little bit after everything that came about from the Chicago Blackhawks incident in Kyle Beach. I know it's a different kind of scenario, but it's still about the same sort of thing about feeling comfortable talking about any kind of problem or being uncomfortable with anything. You should feel comfortable going to your superiors or coaches, your managers, whoever, and feel comfortable that they have their trust and they have your back. And clearly some of these players just didn't get that, did not feel that. And they went about things getting the information to former players, but that's kind of what, like I said, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Spit and Chicklets podcast, but if there's anything they've created, is they've created a platform for current and former players to have a little bit more of a platform to go and to speak a little bit more candidly and get more stories out there and things like that you don't always typically hear. Anyways, but this is where things are at. Like, Mike Babcock is now done in Columbus. This is not a shocker. I really thought this was the only way forward, but now it's official. And like some people I've seen, Akeem Alou, of course, we know Akeem Alou was, former NHL player who had his own issues, of course, with Bill Peters, the racial stuff. He put out a comment earlier saying as well, like, hopefully some of these organizations will learn that, why recycle coaches, bring back these dinosaurs, is what he referred to them as, who have these type of issues. Like, you telling me there's nobody else out there that would have been a good candidate for coach, which is what I said when the Western Hockey League team hired Bill Peters recently. And like, is it really worth it? I don't care if you think they're a good coach or not. You have to evaluate everything else that comes with them. And they're going to bring a lot of distractions, negative attention. They're going to be scrutinized like crazy. And somebody, because there's a lot of people that don't like them, are going to be just waiting for them to mess up even a little bit so they can exploit it and cause situations. And I'm not saying that's what happened here. At the end of the day, obviously, everybody involved felt this was justified and that he shouldn't be the coach anymore. They likely gave him the option to resign before they fired him, would be my guess. I can't prove that, but that's my suspicion. And it's just awkward, but I hope NHL teams maybe have learned a lesson here that you don't need this. Like, if a coach really comes with that much baggage and that much of a, past, and that's questionable and it's going to be scrutinized, you telling me there's nobody else that would be a great candidate when there's all kinds of great coaching candidates that may never even get a chance to coach in the NHL. Stop recycling coaches like this and maybe get somebody in with some more innovative ideas and, move forward. There's certainly ways around this for sure. But for right now, the Jackets have a new coach. Babcock is gone. And this might be the end of it. I don't know if we'll hear any more, if anybody will ever say anything more forward or not. But I know there's a lot of people that doubted the legitimacy of the story because of who it came through with Paul Bissonnette and Spit and Chicklets. But clearly there was something to this, and a lot of players were uncomfortable. And, well, here we are. So, yeah, we'll see what happens now. Hopefully some teams learn from this, and we can avoid situations like this in the future. Let me know your thoughts on Babcock resigning, how the Jackets move forward. Do you think anybody else in Columbus really should be scrutinized for even making the decision to hire him in the first place after everything that we had learned about his past history during his time in Toronto and Detroit before that? Let me know your thoughts. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.